Fat Puppy here, and I am at the China plot of the cemetery, the local cemetery I like to do my stories out of. This is a very wealthy family in medical profession since the Civil War. But the story is not the whole family. It's individuals in the plot. Today I'm concentrating on Fannie China Crossland. She got married, obviously her name became Crossland. Just a quick side note, right here is the grave of Archie China, which was her brother, who was killed in 1924 by his wife with the accusation that he had been fooling around. And by the way, his wife died a week later. And I will link that video in the description for you to get more details on that. Also, as you can see, it's a very prominent stone, and that's the father of the subject. Well, actually it just says China. The father's right over here somewhere. And then behind me, I'm gonna try to get the story, and I don't know if you can see it. I got a lot of glare coming from the sun. Is that right there? It almost looks like sort of like a bed almost. And I seen a name on there. The guy died when he was about 20 years old. That might be an interesting story too. I may do a follow-up video on that. But for now, we're going to talk about Fannie China Crossland. Okay, so to get on with the story. First off, you can tell I've changed clothes. I shot that video, and then I know a lot of wind was going, and it muffled everything. So I just had to shoot another video. It's a little cooler today. It's still kind of a little breezy, so I hope this works out okay. Miss Fannie China Crossland is buried here. She was born in 1876, and she died in 1900. 1900 she died. Fannie was her real name. I looked at, they didn't have birth certificates or death certificates back then. All I could go by was an obituary, and they had her listed as Fannie. Like at October 25th, 1976 is when she was born. She was the daughter of Dr. Archibald China, and the Chinas had been doing medicine, I think, since the Civil War. And so her brother was a doctor, and her dad was a doctor. So Miss China was a smart young lady. She excelled in school. She went to the local Catholic school. I think it was called St. Joseph's then. And she excelled in everything she did, and she was very well liked. She started going, Bennettsville, South Carolina is it's a spot where her sister married a man from Bennettsville, so she went up and down the road quite a lot to Bennettsville, South Carolina, which is in the upper part of the state. It's actually in Marlboro County. There is a Marlboro County. And she met a young man while there visiting her sister. He was a doctor. He was also a widower. His wife had died, and I think he already had 1 or 2 children, and they ended up getting married. She married Dr. Willie Crossland, December 14th, 1898. She was 22 years old. She moved to Bennettsville, South Carolina, a new mother, a stepmother actually. But on March 16th, 1900, tragedy struck. You see, she got pregnant, and she gave birth to a little girl, and she died in childbirth at 23 years old. Gave her life to be a mother. The baby's name is Mary Anderson Crossland. Born March 16th, 1900. Well, she died 3 days later and is buried right over here. I'll show you her spot in a second. So, she died, little girl died, little Marie died, and I just want you to think of something. I do these videos to bring these people back to life to a certain degree, and just, you know, a lot of tragedy in this plot. Right next to me is a stone of a man, her brother, who was killed by his wife around 1924. And so there's been a lot of tears in this spot. A young mother dies, a baby dies, and Dr. Willie Crossland married again 2 years later, so he ended up with 3 wives. And he died about 20 years later of cancer. And he's buried in Bennettsville. He's in Bennettsville, South Carolina, buried there. And so hang on tight. Let me get this camera off here, and I'll show you the tombstone of the little Marie. There it is, right there, at rest in her mother's arms. Marie Anderson Crossland, aged 3 days. That's for her mom right there.
Don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe.